Welcome to today's podcast episode of The Trust Doctor, restoring trust and enriching significant relationships. And you are in for an amazing treat today. And since I know you're going to love this interview, make sure you like, share, comment, and subscribe to this podcast. So today we have an amazing entrepreneur with us today, Eric Partaker. And if you haven't heard of him, let me just give you a little bit of information that will blow your mind. So Eric has been named the CEO of the Year back in 2019 by the Business Excellence Award Group. He was one of the top 30 entrepreneurs across the pond, as we say here in the States, in England. He was Britain's, and I think this is my favorite description of you, Eric, that he is Britain's most disruptive entrepreneur. So I love disruption. Let's shake it up. Eric was instrumental in the creation and the extension of Skype. So we all have a lot to thank him for. And he's a certified coach by the High Performance Institute. And I could go on, but you're not tuning in today to listen to me. So buckle up and let Eric Partaker take us for a ride. Welcome, Eric.
Awesome. Well, I'm super excited to be here. It's great that we're able to kind of unite New York and Portugal, where I'm based at the moment. And yeah, looking forward to hopefully sharing some good stories and giving people some good nuggets that they can hopefully apply.
Great. Well, thank you so much for joining us. And just for the listeners that are actually watching this episode, yes, Eric does not look Portuguese because he's actually a hybrid of Norwegian and American. Is that correct?
That's right. Yeah, half Norwegian, half American.
There you go. So he's sort of kind of can you say Norseman if you're Norwegian or?
Yeah. That's Norwegian. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So we have a half Viking with us today. So tell us, how'd you get here and give us a little bit about your journey.
All right. Well, and if you hear two puppies in the background, those are actual puppies, not my amazing.
Oh, what kind? What kind? Can you pick them up and show us?
I could, but then they probably will bark and sing for the rest of the whole podcast. So.
Okay. Well, what kind of puppies are they?
So they're toy poodles. I'm allergic to dogs, so we got toy poodles because they're hypoallergenic. So they're like one's kind of like reddish, and the other one is like black. And we love ice cream, in this family. So their names are Ben and Jerry.
Oh my gosh, that's hysterical. So for those that don't know, Ben and Jerry's is a reference to the Ben and Jerry's ice cream from Vermont in the States. Exactly. Yeah, we have a lot in common, Eric, not the disruptor and not the CEO of the year, but an ice cream lover and a family of ice cream lovers as well. So I knew we'd find a connection there.
Yeah. So I live in Lisbon, Portugal now. I mean, obviously that wasn't always the case. My mother's American, my biological father Norwegian, and was in Norway until about the age of 5, and then parents split, moved over to Chicago. Was pretty much raised thereafter in Chicago.
Is your mom originally from Chicago, Eric?
Yeah. She's originally from Chicago, and then she remarried and then had this amazing stepfather who raised me, and became a Bulls fan, obviously. So saw the whole Jordan dynasty. Loved that. Basketball was like my passion. Growing
How
up.
tall are you? Tall, Eric? Do you play basketball?
Yeah, I did like in high school. So I'm 6'2". So
yeah.
I'm not short, but not like
tall enough for a shrimp like myself. Yes.
Tall enough. Yeah. And then I went to University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign. Remember Risky Business?
Of course, I can see him dancing on the couch with his underwear on. Is that it?
Yeah. So
gotta cut loose.
So there's this scene in Risky Business where Tom Cruise he has this party and it's out of hand. There's like prostitutes, drugs, alcohol. The whole thing is just going off kilter. And he's got the interviewer for Princeton there. who's gotten completely demolished at this party. And then, the interviewer says, well, I don't think you're going to be going to Princeton. And Tom Cruise says, well, it looks like it will be the University of Illinois. So that's where I went to school.
Oh, come on. Illinois is the fight in Illinois or something, I think.
Yeah, the fight in Illinois.
Awesome school. Champaign?
Yeah. No, it is an awesome school. A great school. But I love that little claim to fame from that movie there, right? So I went to U of I and had a degree in finance, started off in management consulting. So I worked at McKinsey for a while. And at that point, right after it was 2 years at McKinsey in Chicago. And then I thought, I really want to reconnect with that Norwegian side of my family. And
whoa, wait. You couldn't have just woken up one day and felt that. What happened that got you there? I happen to love the Norwegian culture because I love everything about the Vikings. I just love it.
Well, it was like a black hole for me. I didn't really know much about it. It's it wasn't talked about. So I started to
learn. A secret? It was like a secret?
Yeah, in a way, and it wasn't really talked about much. And then I started to learn that, I had actually spent time in this other place. I didn't know what Norway was. And then, I came to know that I, had this another whole side of my early, upbringing that I wasn't aware of, and
wow.
wanted to get and, meet my biological father, and did that. And after, going to visit and meeting some of my half siblings in Norway, I have 3 half siblings there. And then decided, well, hey, wouldn't it be cool to actually, move over and work there and experience that for a little bit? So I did that.
So excuse me, Eric, let me just help us with the timeline because I had interrupted you. So you did a couple of years with McKinsey, right?
Yeah.
And then you wanted to reconnect with your Norwegian roots that you didn't know much about, but just take a look at you. So I'm a little confused how it could be a secret, but so did you stay with McKinsey and work from there? I realized it was, you did. Okay. Yeah. So you kept your career.
Yeah. I transferred to McKinsey's Oslo office.
Okay.
And then I fell in love with, living in Europe, and I had forgotten my Norwegian. I had to relearn the language, which was an interesting experience to actually be a citizen of the country, be 50% Norwegian, but have forgotten the language.
But you still had the muscle memory there, right?
It went quickly. Yeah.
Yeah.
So did that, but then I noticed something interesting because I had grown up in Chicago. So my family in Norway, they're all in a small little fishing village. It's actually an old Viking town. We have old Viking burial mounds in the town.
Oh, I want to go. I love the Vikings. I just love everything about the culture.
Yeah. So I thought it'd be cool to stay there, experience it a bit more, and did that. But then, having grown up in Chicago and with my family from this small town, and then Oslo's a little bit bigger, obviously it's about 500,000 people, but nothing like Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
And after 3 years it got boring for me, and I had just gone through that process of learning a new language, and I thought, I do not want to learn another language. But I wasn't ready to go back to the US. So I thought, well, where can I go? And I looked, London. Okay, great. They speak English. So moved down to London and joined Skype in its very early days, and helped with the scaling of that. And then life has continued to twist and turn, from then till from that point till now. So it's been,
where did your wandering spirit come from? Dare I say it's the Viking in you?
Probably.
Because you seem to like wanderlust, right?
Yeah, very much so. I lived in Belgium also for a while. So I ended up living in the UK then for 17 years. So
for you, that was settled at the time.
Yeah, settled, but I've wandered in lots of different ways. So while I was settled geographically, I then went from Skype. So we had our big sale to eBay for a few $1 billion, back in the early days of Skype. And then after that, I was missing Mexican food, having grown up on it in Chicago. So then I built what became this award-winning chain of Mexican restaurants in the UK. So I went from tech to Mexican restaurants. And so that was like, I started to wander career-wise, right? Jumping around. And then
what was the name of that restaurant? It starts with the C.
Chilango.
Chilango, right. Okay.
And then and now we live in Lisbon, Portugal. We're 5 minutes, from the beach. It's pretty much sunny all year round. And this is the next leg of the adventure.
Awesome. So when you say we, who's the we?
So my wife, Giselle, she's everything is so international, right? So she's Brazilian. And we
all know that because of Tom Brady, right? Giselle?
Exactly. Well, it's the same Giselle.
Yeah. Just Tom Brady doesn't know.
Well, he's Monday through Wednesday. I'm Thursday through Sunday.
Oh.
So Giselle and I met in London, and her being Brazilian, she always had a passion for returning to a Latin culture, warmer weather. And so we thought, hey, Portugal, they speak Portuguese, obviously, Giselle's native language. And I have two boys, Alex, who's 16, Leo, who's 8 years old, and then the two puppies, Ben and Jerry. So we're, a family of four.
That's great. So did you have to learn Portuguese? Like, did you have a Spanish background at all?
No, I didn't have to, but I did it. I did it because, and I speak at like an intermediate level. I did it because I realized really quickly after meeting Giselle's family that I wouldn't be able to really have like a relationship with them if I didn't know some Portuguese. So the challenge I set for myself was to deliver my wedding speech in Portuguese. And so that was my, the thing that helped me kind of like learn the language.
All right. So I'm going to put you on the spot. Give me one sentence from your wedding speech in Portuguese.
Oh my God.
Sorry, you set yourself up for it.
Yeah. So você é minha alma gêmea. So that means you are my soulmate.
Oh, that's so sweet. You must have won her whole family's heart with that.
Yeah. I mean, I think it was a combination of them liking the words, but them also thinking it was kind of funny me trying to speak the language.
But but people, for the most part, I think people appreciate the effort. What do we say in coaching? Progress, not perfection.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. And I think that says a lot about somebody as opposed to imposing your culture, your language on her and on them, or just not caring. So that says a lot about you as a person. Awesome.
Yeah. So it was, I mean, the kids are incredible because they're so multilingual from, from birth. They speak multiple languages, Norwegian, French, Portuguese, English. And so that's what's really amazing is to see how quickly they've soaked up, the multiculturalness, in the parents, and they're able to speak, all these different languages. So,
it's so funny that you say that because I speak two languages, English and Brooklynese. You probably haven't heard about it, right? So it's really one language, but I feel for someone that sort of kind of has a lot of, wallpaper degrees, I call it, I feel so ignorant because most Americans, maybe will speak a language and we're so isolated, right? I mean, there's a reason for that. So I actually finally just downloaded, you're going to crack up, Duolingo.
Nice.
On my phone, and I'm trying so hard to learn Spanish because we go to Spain a lot. Well, I'm sorry, we go to Mexico a lot. And in school, I studied French because at the time, educated people studied French and Latin, which of course is a dead language. So that was really helpful. But really the Latin, knowing the roots in Latin helps me. But I really love just trying to learn another language because it just broadens out who you are. So you've given your children such a gift of the world.
Oh yeah, and they're getting it, from birth. And just a quick one for you too. So Duolingo. So I used that in my early Portuguese days. But then another thing that was really helpful for me. Check out a website called italki. So it's basically italki.com.
Italki.
Yeah, exactly. 2 I's on either side. Because you go to this website and you can get access to like any native language speaker in the world for reasonable, online tutoring rates. So yeah, anyway, I think that will help you a lot. Because the thing I found, like the hardest thing with learning a new language is to break out of like the academic side of learning, where it's like, okay, I got to read the words and be able to write the words, and go into the actual speaking and listening.
Yeah.
That's the most difficult part. And which is kind of interesting if you think about it, right? Because with a child, they learn it in the opposite order, right? So they listen, then they speak, and then they read, or then they write, and then they read, right? Or I don't know which way that goes actually, but you know what I mean? It's like the reverse.
Yeah. Well, they learn it in context to what's relevant.
Yeah.
And it's so interesting you're saying that, because I was talking to a coaching client who's in Chicago yesterday.
Yeah.
And we were talking about the language, and I said, I'm trying to learn. So I get up in the morning and I have my little ritual, right? We'll have a little ritual, and I go on the Duolingo app, right? And it's 5 minutes, and it's very much, there's a reason I'm going here. It's very much like BJ Fogg's Tiny Habits.
Yes.
It's small incremental learning that's creating the new neural pathway that's relevant. And I'm not studying vocabulary, I'm doing it within context. So with that as our lead, tell us about all your work as a high performance coach. And clearly, I mean, the listeners, I'm just glued to this interview, because we know you bring the whole person, right, to your coaching, to the person that you're helping. And look at the literal breadth of knowledge from the world that you're bringing. So share that with us. And if you could throw in how that relates to how you build relationships, because most people are listening to this because they want understanding on building trust and building relationships, which from my end, all success is based upon the ability to create, nurture, and sustain relationships, beginning and end.
Okay. So I got to tell you a story though, to kind of provide a segue to this. So we're going to go back a little over a decade.
Okay.
And I'm catching a return flight to London. And then shortly after the plane reaches, cruising altitude,
I know where you're going. Yeah, this is gonna be good.
I have a lot of pressure that builds up, starts to build up in my chest, a lot of pain through the neck, down my left arm. And I got my buddy Lewis sat next to me. I'm like, Lewis, feel my arm. And Lewis feels my arm. And the look in his face is basically confirming what I felt. He said to me, he's like, Eric, it's like your arm's been hanging in a meat locker. My left arm was like, I don't know, felt like it was good, like 10 degrees colder than the rest of my body. And I started feeling nauseous, like I was going to throw up, a lot of pain. And then Lewis jumps over, grabs the attention of a flight attendant who asks if there's a doctor on board. Doctor rushes over, there was, luckily. Doctor rushes over, takes my vital signs and says, we need to land the plane immediately. I think he's having a heart attack. And plane emergency lands, not that quickly, right? That descent was just terrifying. I thought my heart was going to stop, completely just before we reached safety. We emergency land. There's an ambulance waiting on the runway. They immediately administer nitrates right there in the ambulance on the runway to open up, the arteries, increase blood flow to the heart. And then the ambulance speeds off to the local hospital. And I looked up at the paramedic looking down at me and I said, please don't let me die. I have a 5-year-old son who's now 16. And that was a starting point for me of this whole journey, because, prior to that point, it was just everything on the altar of success, whatever it took. Working, 100-hour work weeks at McKinsey, helping, with the scaling of Skype, building the restaurant chain. It's just nonstop all the time, pedal to the metal. And then when it nearly costs you your life, you obviously take a step back. And so that's what prompted me to start looking at all these ways in which we can elevate performance, but without compromising our health, without compromising our relationships.
Right. Well, you called it the altar of success. And as soon as you said that, I'm thinking, well, it's really the sacrificial altar of success. And the person you're sacrificing is yourself.
Yeah, exactly. And I thought, I remember when I woke up the next day in the hospital, and
so you were having a heart attack, in fact.
Yeah. And when I woke up the next day in the hospital, I remember being very disoriented, but then at the same time, I remember thinking being super grateful, like, oh my God, I'm alive.
How old were you, Eric? How old were you?
I was 35.
Wow.
I'm 46 now. So yeah, but I thought it was just interesting because when you're in a moment like that, when you think it's like, that's it, everything's gone. Whatever you say or whatever comes to mind, like that is your truth, right? Because there's
clarity. It's clarity.
Yeah, there's no chance to, I didn't say, for example, please don't let me die. I have to finish clearing out my inbox.
Right.
Right. It was, what was, and it was alarming to me that the thing that I said that I wanted to live for was, one of the key relationships in my life that I probably wasn't paying enough attention to. Right.
Okay. So you used the word alarm, right? So I think you then wrote a book.
Yes.
The 3 alarm. So tell us about that, because it does sound like all roads lead. Where you are today was all predicated upon that pivotal moment.
Yeah. Well, so that prompted me to want to start just living and thinking a little bit more intentionally. It's like we're quite goal oriented when it comes to work, but I don't think we live as intentionally. Well, we don't even live that intentionally when it comes to work, although we might be goal oriented, and we certainly don't do it enough within our health and relationships. And I really focused on those 3 things. Like I think of it as like a 3-legged stool: our health, our work, and our relationships. Without our health, we're nothing. If your health is compromised, I guarantee you the first thing you're going to think about is your relationships. And if you don't manage the work bit correctly, even though it provides a lot of meaning, it can get you into trouble with both your health and relationships.
Mm-hmm.
So there's this interesting thing with those three things, and I wanted to be more intentional in each of those areas. And so I over time, I ended up setting 3 different alarms on my phone to cue me to step into, being my best. And I'll give you, another little very, very quick story, which then ties to these 3 alarms. So about 3 months ago, I bought a Captain America shield for my 8-year-old Leo.
Mm-hmm.
And when I gave him that shield, he instantly became Captain America.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have to sit down with him and go, okay, Leo, now we're going to do some Captain America behavioral training. Like he didn't need that. Right. So it's amazing how we have this ability to just step into being, a superhero version of ourselves when we're kids,
Mm-hmm.
but somehow we lose that along the way. And so we're
fearless, and we don't know enough to know no.
Yeah, exactly.
We haven't been told we can't do it.
Yeah, exactly. And so the 3 alarms thing is about, in a way, it's about tapping back into that childhood fearlessness.
Mm-hmm.
That childhood, just act as if you already are the thing, pretend you are, and using that as a way to be more intentional in those areas: health, work, and relationship. So my first alarm, when it goes off every day, it goes off at 6:30 a.m. and it says World Fitness Champion. And I'm not a World Fitness Champion, but that's like my Captain America expression in the health domain, and that's who's going to the gym. And on the days when I don't feel like going to the gym, it's a subtle reminder. Well, would a World Fitness Champion not go to the gym just because they don't feel like going to the gym? Of course not. So I go anyway. Next alarm goes off at 9 a.m. and it says World's Best CEO. You can see a theme here: World's Best, right? World Fitness Champion. Again, it's like I'm not trying to be. I don't think I'm number one in these areas, but it's just. I like the word world class. If you look at the word world class, by definition, it simply means of and amongst the best. It doesn't mean you have to be the best, of and amongst the best. And that's how I want to be in the areas of life that matter most. So at 9 a.m., next alarm goes off, it says world's best CEO, just so that I can be prompted to think, well, if I was starting my day as that, how would I be looking at my day? How would I be showing up for these different meetings? Who would I be? What would I do? And then the last alarm of the day goes off at 6:30 p.m. and it says world's best husband and father, just to prompt the question, well, how would the world's best husband and father walk through that door right now? And that was a real big one for me on the relationship side of things, because I had realized before I had defined what best looked like, gave it a name and cued it at the right time of day, that I had no intentionality, with my relationships at home. It's like the evening would start and I'd just be like, blah, evening. You know what I mean? It's like, I'd get home, for example, and Giselle might ask for some help, with something. I'd be like, can we do it over the weekend?
Because, we do it later. Yeah.
Yeah. Me and Tom Brady got to talk about flipping our day schedule around,
Yeah. He's got to buy on Sunday. Like, come on, I need you on Sunday. Right.
And it doesn't make me, you said progress, not perfection. It doesn't make you, it's not about like becoming perfect in all these areas, but like if we went into a shooting range and if you were blindfolded, what's your chance of hitting a target? Like 0. Even if you don't know how to shoot, provided you weren't blindfolded, at least if you had something to aim for over time, you would get closer to it. And so it's just about having something to aim for in these areas. And over time, I feel like I'm getting closer, to being better, basically.
So when you say the world class, it sounds like you're trying to be intentional, and it's really measuring yourself against who you want to be, defined by how you are the best for who you want to be in those areas of your life, right? Not necessarily vis-a-vis other people. So here's a question I have for you, right? As someone that really values relationships, I wish life were as simple as the way you described it. Like we get up in the morning and nothing gets in the way of going to the gym, right?
Yeah.
Like I know in my house, when I was raising my kids, who was throwing up, the dog has to go out. It's snowing here today in the Northeast. So, oh my God, is there a snow delay? I'm going to shoot myself because I don't have childcare, right? So, and then that impacts going to the gym. It impacts my work because my calls don't care what's going on in my life in a way. And my kids just want to have Cheerios and watch cartoons, right? So when life gets messy and remember the old school Venn diagrams?
Yeah.
And the Venn diagrams don't quite line up the way we want them to. What do you do? Did that make sense, that question?
Totally. And, there's a few things, and they're around, like crossover. I'll say crossover, 80% is good enough, and just self-compassion. So, on the first one. So yeah, you're like, even though you can set an alarm at the time of day, whereby, you're choosing an identity that is the best identity to power that segment of the day, life is not so perfectly segmented, as you just pointed out, right? So for example, I could be working, and Leo, the 8-year-old, my 8-year-old could come in right now, and I'm in work mode, world's best CEO. But in that moment, I have to think, okay, well, how would me as, the best father I could be, how should that version of me respond right now? Right. And similarly in the morning, if you want to go to the gym, but I don't know, you get a flat tire or something happens, right? Then you have to say, well, okay, what's the best way to respond to this right now? And so there's that recognition that there's a little bit of bleed over, a crossover, and it's not so perfect. And then 80%, I always think like 80% is good enough, so if 80% of the time you could be trying, deliberately trying to improve and do as well as you can, that's good. And if one day a week, you're like, screw it. I'm going to have Ben and Jerry's ice cream for breakfast, pizza for dessert, and watch a Netflix series for the rest of the day. I mean, that's quite extreme, but so be it. And then the last point, self-compassion. Like sometimes you just royally screw up and you get it all wrong, and Leo comes through the door and you don't respond as well as you could. You get angry, you yell, and so you're going to continue to make mistakes, but that's okay. Just stand back up. So
yeah, I think what you just described it's called life, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Life gets in the way. And from the working mom's perspective, like we're in the middle of, well, hopefully on the tail end of the pandemic, right? And but I think this example is evergreen, otherwise I wouldn't bring it up. And many moms and dads, but it seems to fall more on the moms. You have a sign on your door, right? Do not disturb unless somebody's dying. Something like stop, like something like that. And of course, the kids, like they know when you tell them, but then something comes up, they come I mean, I've been on calls, the kids come flying and or the kid comes crying and quietly, and the mom's like, out.
Yeah.
And there's so much, just ask your kids to make fun of you. Like when you're on a call with the client and it's not video, you're like, and my kids are funny. They're like, they can always tell if I'm in the middle of something because I'll answer the phone. Hello. They're like, Mom, you're at work. I'm like, yeah, it's 2:00. Where else would I be? But there's a lot of soul searching because, and the kids are saying, Mom, I'm sorry. I know I shouldn't have done it. And the parents are like, you know what? Why would you not think you could access me if I'm normally not working from home, or if you're normally at school, right? Everything's been upended. So it's just an opportunity you have a target, you just do the best you can. And then, did you use the word have some compassion?
Yeah, exactly.
And then have compassion for everyone involved in the situation.
Before it was lights out for me, it's like, I look back and I had no compassion. It's like, I had to, like, if I didn't hit my schedule, like, the world was going to come apart and I'd be pissed off. And now I'm like less pissed off. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, how did you flip that? How did you change that mindset, Eric?
It took a long damn time. Right. So it was not as, it's not like, oh, I just put these 3 alarms on the phone and everything's fine.
We're good to go.
Yeah. I mean, it takes a long time. I mean, this is a good segue into another, people, there's a big myth out there that personalities can't change. Your personality is fixed. That's a bunch of crap. Your personality.
Now we're talking about Benjamin Hardy's work.
Yeah, exactly. And when that came out,
permanent. Yeah.
And when that came out, I was like, I didn't even need to read the book because I had witnessed it with myself. Right. My wife even says, just in the course of our marriage, she's like, if I compare who you were at the beginning of the marriage to who you are today, it's a completely different human being.
Mm-hmm.
So back to the question of like, how did that change happen? It was hard and it was slow and it took a lot of effort, but by, first of all, being aware of where I was going wrong, having a target of what best looked like for me, and then on a daily basis, just trying to get a little bit closer to it, still messing up, a little bit closer, still messing up, and over time, just, getting better. For example, I used to be I was such a procrastinator that I would sit down to start working, and within 5 minutes, I'd be distracted, lose what I was doing, and suddenly 3 hours would pass, and I'd look back and be like, "Oh my God, what have I spent my time doing just now?" And then over time, I've learned how to stay focused, and that's just one example, right?
Well, was that procrastination, or was that procrastination a symptom of ADHD?
Well, I don't know.
Okay.
Perhaps. I haven't done an ADHD test. I've done I'm on the autism spectrum for Asperger's, but ADHD hasn't come up. But it,
it's not that I'm not picking up on it at all, but many times that type of procrastination is we just, we, especially entrepreneurs, right? We have the shiny object in the minute.
Yeah. But for me, it was like causing a lot of stress, that tendency, because I would, my days would often feel like I was hanging on to the back of a train rather than driving it. And then I'd get to the end and realize that not only was I hanging on the back of the train, not feeling in control, but I had gotten on the wrong train and ended up in the wrong destination.
So how did you shift that? And did that account for the 18-hour work days?
Oh, definitely. So that's one of the huge insights that I learned when I started to study peak performance and habit formation and change. I came across, I read this book, The One Thing. Have you?
Yes. Yeah. Let the one thing be the one thing.
Yeah. And there's a nice and amazing little research anecdote in that book where they talk about a study, I think it's in Stanford University, where they observed that the average person is losing 28% of their workday to just multitasking ineffectiveness, jumping around from one thing to the next, and not actually, completing what they're doing. And then that was it. They just said that. And I thought, hang on. So I took that 28%, multiplied it by the number of work weeks in a year. And then it was way more compelling because it means that the average person is losing 13 weeks a year, which is an entire calendar quarter.
Wow.
So when you think of it,
that's the finance guy in you coming out, because I never would have went there.
Yeah, but isn't that way more compelling than because and then I thought, of course I feel stressed. I'm trying to win a 4-quarter basketball game in 3 quarters. I had to sit out the 4th quarter. I'm still expecting to win.
Right. You fouled yourself out.
Yeah. And so I just started to really work on focus and becoming a lot more aware of when I was jumping around and getting distracted and trying to, it starts with awareness and everything in your relationships and your own routines and habits. And once you're aware of where you're going wrong and what triggers that and how it shows up when you do it, then you have a chance to start correcting it. Right? But I wasn't even aware. I was going through the day blind, not even knowing how I was losing all the time.
Well, you don't know what you don't know, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, I so much of my work with all relationships, business, personal, is emotional intelligence. And what's the most important skill set? Self-awareness, because you don't know what you don't know. So you've had so many journeys, literally and figuratively. Who would you say has been the most influential person in your life, the most influential relationship?
Oh, I mean, it's so easy. And it is my wife, because
back to Giselle.
Yeah, exactly. No, because she helped, like I said earlier, she says I'm a completely different person. Well, that was in part
her influence.
Not in part to her. So I've talked about, loss, right? Almost losing various things. So I almost lost her. So, I woke up one morning, I remember she had tears in her eyes and she's like, this doesn't work. I'm leaving, unless you make some changes. And this was, this is a few years after, the whole plane incident. And I thought I was getting things in place and I was working a lot on my health and trying to become more focused at work, but I still wasn't giving, her the attention, that she needed.
You weren't working on the relationship, you're working on yourself. Yeah,
exactly. And there's this loss aversion is incredibly powerful, right? We're twice as likely to want to avoid losing something as we are gaining something. And that's a fantastic, and we're so good. Like children get it because it's part of being disciplined, right? Oh, that's going to be taken away at work. But somehow, like we get into adulthood and we stop using loss aversion. I don't know why, because it's a very powerful mechanism that hacks straight into the core of your DNA. And when that was presented to me, that was all. That's what it took. That was like the final bit of motivation I needed to, complete that change and start, working harder on the relationship side of things too. And again, I'm not like perfect and I still screw up all the time. But, if she was here right now, she'd say, yeah, but he screws up a lot less. So,
well, and again, intention goes a long way. Even if you screw up, you're trying.
Yeah.
Right. So what would you say is a major misconception people have about you that you prefer not to correct?
Oh gosh, a major misconception people have about me that I would prefer not to correct.
Yeah, let them think.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's a great question. I think everyone thinks, well, see, I have no problem correcting this, but I can't think of another. The general sense I get when I talk to people is that they think like, I just got it all. It's all together. Everything's like, it's all worked out. And, I wake up and
they only knew.
Yeah, I wake up and, for example, I go to the gym without fail 6 days a week, but people confuse that with, oh, so you must love going to the gym. No, it's like half the time I'm like, oh crap, I gotta go. I don't want to go, but it's like I've developed this ability to just do things, even if I don't feel like doing them.
Well, you delay gratification, I guess you figured out.
Yeah. So and I get stressed just as much probably as the average person. Maybe I've learned how to process it better. And I have probably I'd say 30% of my days, if I'm being totally honest, I'm feeling like a little bit down. 70% of the days I'm feeling up. But to me, like what I've learned is like it's just life, I guess. Things aren't like, I haven't reached this point where it's like, oh, every day is perfect, everything's perfect about me.
You're not living in nirvana?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, but I think people think like it's all like just worked out, and it's not that. I guess I've just figured out how to kind of accept the fact that it isn't all worked out better.
Right. And that's probably your gift to so many of your clients, that you help them figure out how to make it work for them.
Or accept that it's okay when things don't work.
Right. So I have another question for you. And we heard your story, right? So I would prefer not to double dip unless you have to. Okay. And unless it's Ben and Jerry's, of course. What's the most important thing you learned in your life that you want everyone to know? The most important thing.
Great question as well. I'd say the most important skill you can develop, and I've just kind of commented on it, is the ability is to not believe this equation, that feeling generates action, but instead to flip it around such that action generates feeling. Because in the former, you get in a situation where you don't do the things that you want to be doing because you don't feel like it. But in the latter, you get into the situation where even if you don't feel like it, that that's almost like the antics of a small child. You smirk at that and you just start to take action on whatever it is. And the action itself creates the feelings that you're seeking about whatever it is that you're doing. Mm-hmm. That makes sense at all?
It makes sense. And I'd like you to expand upon that. You're talking to a clinical psychologist by education, right? So the whole feeling and action and the connection, the mind, the body, like we're finally getting that. So go a little bit deeper from a more tangible example for that.
Right. Okay.
I think that would be so helpful.
Okay. So let's say that. So what I'm not saying is that there is not a relationship between feeling and action, and that these aren't two important components within the model of our existence. I'm saying that there's a order that you can play around with in my own life experience. So I wrote my book, The 3 Alarms. The number of days that I actually wanted to sit down and write that book, I'm dead serious, it's probably zero.
Yeah. Who feels like it? Right.
Yeah. Now, if my old self, that version of me would have never written the book because I never felt like doing it.
Well, you would have sat down and distracted yourself and cleaned out your
Exactly.
office.
And then my new self, a little bit around the block, a little bit, calloused. Again, I would laugh at those feelings, when they appeared at the beginning of the day that I knew I wanted to write, but then suddenly didn't feel like it, wanted to procrastinate. And when those feelings came up, I started to become very, very good at almost like compartmentalizing those feelings and be, almost like as if it was like a little small child acting up in me and just being like, yeah, I know you. I'm not going to be fooled by you. It's like, oh, there he goes again, misbehaving, right? And I knew that all I had to do, and I got this in my head, just choose to start for just 5 minutes. Just choose to start for just 5 minutes. Not saying I have to or I should, because that's quite oppressive and like, in a way of talking to yourself, but like more control. Like you can choose to do anything you want, whether you like it or not, right? So I choose to start rather than finish. Right? Finish. Gosh, it feels endless. But start. And then a nanosecond, I choose to start. And then for just 5 minutes, because I thought if I could just write for 300 seconds, my theory was that I would never know when the 300th second has gone by. And it was true. I found that if I just started writing, acknowledged the feelings, but it's like, that's fine. Then suddenly 5 minutes became 10, 20. And then once it's like a ball rolling down the hill. It's like once it starts to gather its own momentum.
You gain the momentum, right?
Yeah. Like they say, the hardest part about going for a run is, putting on your sneakers, right?
Right.
So it's like, it's the same concept really.
Mm-hmm.
We can even go on a first principles basis and just, think about, physics again, right? So it's like, inertia, and just,
exactly.
when you get something in motion, it's much easier for it to stay in motion.
Exactly.
And that's what I mean by it, because it's the feelings that can prevent you from actually pushing the boulder. When all you have to do is screw the feelings for a moment, just push the boulder. And then once the boulder starts to roll, then suddenly the feelings come in. I'm doing this. I feel better. I'm actually making some progress. And that feels, that there's this saying, the pain of discipline is far less than the pain of regret. Mm-hmm. I heard that somewhere. And I thought, I built on that idea and I thought, yes. So basically what that's saying is that nothing in life comes for free. It requires some form of payment. Mm-hmm. So choose your pain wisely, because if you don't do it now and procrastinate, it's still going to require a payment. You're going to have a payment that's going to be requested for that delay. And it's going to come in the form of regret. And that will cost way more than the payment in the moment of the discipline of just starting, right? So it's like a merger of these various concepts in my head.
Well, and also, and again, I hear so much of the BJ Fogg in there, right? But also the concept of the feeling, we know we can't ignore feelings, right? Emotions that are repressed get amplified. But what you said is that you acknowledge the feeling, but then you don't allow it to control you. You make a conscious decision, because if it controls you, you'd be doing nothing, right? And gosh, couldn't the world learn from not allowing those primitive feelings to just control us, right? So you acknowledge the feeling, and then you make a conscious decision to act differently.
Yeah.
Not
exactly. I don't try to make the feeling go away. I don't try to change it into a new feeling.
Correct. You can't. Right.
Yeah. I just like, yeah. And then, but also too, it's like, you start to, it's almost like recognizing your neighbors in the street. You start to, yeah, I knew you were coming. I've seen you before. And
I know how to, and I know how to engage with you or not.
Yeah, exactly. And I know I'm just going to go ahead and, hi neighbor. Yeah. Good to see you. Yeah. I know you hate my, my fence and all of that, but I'm just going to go into my house.
Or what women do is we cross the street.
Yeah,
We
exactly.
go to the other side. But then also what you do is, which I think is really valuable for everybody listening, is that then you set a manageable expectation. Anybody can write for 5 minutes. The thought of
300 seconds.
Yeah, the thought of 15 is daunting. Like, oh, right.
Yeah.
And then to go back to the physics, then once you get rolling, you're on a roll.
Exactly. Just focus on continuously starting, and the finishing takes care of itself.
Awesome. Eric, anything else you'd like to share with the listeners today? I could talk forever. I planned on talking longer, but I know you have other commitments. So, and anything else you'd like to share?
All this stuff isn't easy, but do yourself a favor and don't require it to be. It's not easy. It just takes time. Become aware of what you want to change and just keep trying, but have an intention for what best looks like, and just try to do one thing on a daily basis, which if done would evidence whatever that intention is.
Great. So how can people find out about you, learn more about you? Where would you like to send them? So
just go on to the World Wide Web and go to Eric. No. Yeah, well, you can go to my website, ericpartaker.com. Eric with a C, Partaker, like it sounds, like caretaker, ericpartaker.com. I do a weekly Peak Performance Insights newsletter there. And you can also grab a free copy of my book, The 3 Alarms, that's on the website.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. So thank you so much. This was so enjoyable. I plan on visiting you in Lisbon, Portugal, like it or not, sooner or later. And so that's a wrap for today's episode of The Trust Doctor, restoring trust and enriching significant relationships. And I knew that Eric was going to take us for a ride today. So make sure you like, comment, share, and subscribe to today's podcast, and we'll see you next time.
Once again, we've concluded another great episode of The Trust Doctor with Dr. Patty Ann. Tune in next week for more insights and advice on how you can create, nurture, and sustain healthy relationships. To find out more about the podcast, visit drpattyann.com/podcast. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, review, and share. Until next time.